Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here. In this video, we've got some mega news to go over. We're talking about GameCube and Wii, Nintendo DS, PlayStation Vita, iOS, and more. Let's get started. Alright, we'll kick things off here talking about PlayStation Vita emulation on Android with Vita3k. I get asked multiple times on a daily basis when this emulator is actually releasing. And I think now we might have a pretty good idea. So the legendary MacDude, the main person behind this Vita3k Android port, says a first Android build will most likely release next week. I still need to finish packaging the APK and then I'll let a few other devs test it before. And here's the updated to-do list before this APK is actually released. And if we take a look here, most of this stuff is already done. We've got 2 things remaining. This is extremely exciting. Vita3k is going to be here before you know it. So in the meantime, while you're waiting for Vita3k on Android to actually release, head over to Vita3k.org and click on compatibility and learn what games currently work with Vita3k and what games currently are experiencing issues. And speaking about emulation on Android, next up we're talking about Nintendo DS emulation on Android with MelonDS. And MelonDS is about to receive a pretty big update, and the first update since 2021. Now this update has been in the works for a while, and I'm finally glad it's here. Beta 1.8.0 is about to hit the Google Play Store, and it brings the Android version in line with the PC version, MelonDS version 0.9.5. We've got some bug fixes, we've got some improvements, and we've also got some very cool things, for example implementing the DSiWare Manager. This allows you to install DSiWare titles to the NAND directly from the emulator. This is a really big improvement and something amazing that's about to hit Android. If you are interested in DS emulation and you haven't checked out MelonDS, I highly recommend giving it a try. It's free, it's open source, and it's pretty awesome. And speaking about pretty awesome, next up we're talking about the exact opposite of that. Not awesome at all. Now this is flagged as just a rumor, but it's basically where the industry is headed. Physical Xbox games are apparently no longer going to be manufactured and distributed in Brazil. Some people might say, hey, you know what, it's just Brazil, it's not the rest of the world. Well, it might start with Brazil here, but basically it seems that, as I said, this is where the industry is headed. And with physical games no longer being manufactured and distributed in one country, I'm assuming other countries might soon follow. Now before you get too upset about that, coincidentally enough here, ROMs are also mostly digital. And speaking about mostly digital, next up we're talking about something extremely interesting and something I've been pinged about a whole bunch of times today. I'm not joking with you. I have a whole bunch of messages about touchHLE. A high-level emulator for iPhone OS apps, and it just released. So the HLE and touchHLE stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or it stands for high-level emulator depending on how you want to interpret that. The goal of the project is to run games from the early days of iOS. Only iPhone, iPod Touch apps for iPhone OS 2 have been tested so far. Modern 64-bit iOS app support is explicitly a non-goal. However, they do state it's likely they will attempt to support some apps from newer 32-bit versions, especially 3 and 4. And the iPad in the future, iPhone OS 1 support might be attempted also. And this is free, it's open source, it's on GitHub, and I'll drop a link to it in the description below. The first release is version 0.1.0, it's available for Mac and Windows only. Since this is open source, I'm curious to see where it goes from here, but congratulations on the first release. And speaking about releases, next up we're talking about Nintendo GameCube and Wii emulation with Dolphin. And I forgot to talk about this one in yesterday's video, so we're covering it today. If you are currently using Dolphin on Android and you've signed up to be a beta tester on the Google Play Store, chances are you've already got this update. Skylanders Portal UI has been added to the Android version. On top of that, if you're currently using Dolphin, you might want to pay attention to the development builds. There may or may not be a big performance improvement in the works. And speaking about performance, next up we're talking about PlayStation 4 emulation with Obliteration, and I have some very interesting updates for you. Although at this point in time, Obliteration is still in very early stages of development and game compatibility really isn't there just yet. they are making progress. If you're on Linux, they've initialized a Flatpak builder. And speaking about Linux, moving on, and we're talking about the Steam Deck and Linux gaming in general. PROTON version 7.0-6 has just released. We've got a whole bunch of fixes and a bunch of games now listed as playable. Gotham Knights, Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection, Heroes of the Dark, Super Arcade Racing, and more. And as for the fixes, we've got fixes for Vampire Survivors, Persona 5 Royal, Microsoft Flight Simulator, Quake 3 Arena, Spyro, and a whole bunch more. Although the hardware in this Steam Deck really isn't getting any better here, the game compatibility certainly is, and the Steam Deck is still a must-buy. And last up here, but certainly not least, we're talking about Sonic the Hedgehog Volume 2 on the NES. Yes, Sonic is on the NES, and yes, this ROM hack just got an update. So they state this hack greatly modifies a large part of the game's resources to provide a better experience, adding a new soundtrack, redesigning levels, renewing the graphics, and introducing a series of new elements and mechanics. If you are interested in this one, I'll drop a link in the description below and feel free to check it out. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. We talked about a whole bunch today. Let me know your thoughts about absolutely any of it in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos, don't tempt fate, save your state.